All right, cool. Well, welcome everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Jenna Dodson, and I'm going to be your host for this evening. I'm Adopt a Stream State Coordinator, and I'm really excited that you guys are here with us tonight. Just a few Zoom housekeeping notes. Reminder that the session is being recorded and will be posted on our website afterwards. And you will remain muted with your video off for the duration of this webinar. However, if you have a question during the presentation, please type it into the Q&A that you should find at the bottom of your screen. The chat, which you guys have been using to kind of give some information about yourself, that's going to be disabled during the presentation just to allow you to focus more on the presentation. If you do have any questions during the presentation, just type them straight into the Q&A and we'll answer them kind of in all one go round at the end. But if you do need to get our attention for any reason during the presentation, there's also a raise your hand feature that's located at the bottom of the screen as well. So you can click that and we will send you a message to see how we can help.
Yeah, thanks, Jenna. My name is Bailey Craps. I am also an Adopt a Stream State Coordinator, so thanks for joining us today. We just wanted to give you a little bit of background. If you're unfamiliar with Georgia Adopt a Stream, we are a citizen science program and we help train volunteers to monitor water quality across the state of Georgia and beyond. So thanks for joining us for those of you that are beyond the Georgia borders. We do have an annual conference every year for our volunteers called Confluence, which you are a part of right now. And this is our first ever virtual conference. So thank you for joining us today and bearing with us as we kind of navigate these new virtual waters together. So thanks again for joining us. Get started.
Yeah, we are going to get started.
Yeah, I will say that this session, I know it's scheduled from 5 to 7. It most likely will not go to 7 p.m. It'll probably be more like 6 p.m. So yeah, if you're feeling a little wary about a 2-hour session, today's probably will not be that long.
Yeah. Unless there are just endless questions, which are also a good thing.
Yeah, we are happy to answer all your questions. So either way.
Yeah, okay. Well, I will get this going here. And get going. Bailey, are you gonna start us off? You're muted.
I'm muted. Sorry. I'm just chatting away. Okay. Yes. Yeah, so thanks everybody for joining us. Today we're going to be giving a brief overview and kind of an introduction to Adopt a Stream and what it looks like to be involved with our program and yeah, how you can get started with us. So who are we as an organization? It's going to be a little bit of a mouthful to explain, but Georgia Adopt a Stream is a state agency, so we are housed in the non-point source unit of the Watershed Protection Branch and the Environmental Protection Division, which is a sister program to Georgia Department of Natural Resources. So kind of all linked here, but really all of that is just to let you know that we are a state agency and we work with other people who are doing types of different regulatory actions across the state and helping us to monitor water quality and different things happening. So we are, as Barbara likes to call us, who's on this call, the warm and fuzzies of the Watershed Protection Branch. So we help to raise awareness of non-point source pollution. So as you can see here, that's what we attribute to be the #1 cause of water quality problems in our state. And that's really because everyone contributes to non-point source pollution and we don't always know how we're contributing. And it's not always easy to point out that source versus point source pollution. You know, obviously they're easily identifiable. You can point out exactly where that pollution is coming from. If you see a leaking sewer pipe, if you see, you know, something very easily identifiable coming out from, say, a industrial facility, then you can point that out really quickly. And that's what a lot of our coworkers do at the EPD Watershed Protection Branch is permitting and keeping tabs on all of those things. But our program really focuses on educating citizens and equipping citizens to learn more about non-point source pollution and how to combat that. So we'll get started talking about some different programs that are also housed in our outreach unit. So the first being Rivers Alive. Rivers Alive is kind of like Georgia Adopt a Stream's sister program. We are all housed in the same office, and we kind of work on these things and collaborate together. But Rivers Alive is Georgia's volunteer cleanup program, and it's statewide, and you can clean up not just rivers, but lakes, streams in your backyard, anything like that. Anywhere that you see needs a cleanup. So if you see trash in your neighborhood stream or the lake that you visit every year, these are things that we can help you organize and equip you to do. So we usually provide trash bags and t-shirts and trash picker uppers and gloves. If you're not able to procure those things yourselves, we're happy to help. This year looks a little bit different due to the pandemic. So instead of providing t-shirts for everyone, all of our volunteers that have a registered cleanup will receive a full neck buff, so that can be used as a PPE while you're out doing smaller socially distanced cleanups this year instead. So if you are interested in getting involved with that or finding a cleanup near you, we'll open the chat back up after the end of this presentation, and feel free to, or you can use the Q&A right now if you have questions. We can definitely give you more information on how to get involved with those things. Next is Project WET, which is Water Education Today. So for any environmental educators, formal or informal, so if you're in a school or an education, outdoor education facility, this is a program that might be beneficial to you. So we work with Monica Kilpatrick, who is kind of the coordinator, the state coordinator for this program, and she works with teachers to educate them about how to educate students. So if you want any other information about that and the resources available through that program, please let us know. Next is River of Words, which is kind of like a part of the Project WET program, but River of Words is an international contest for kids that are in kindergarten through 12th grade, and it doesn't have to be in a formal setting. It can be any type of student that's K through 12. So it's a poetry and art contest focused on water and what they've learned about watersheds, water quality, and things like that. Georgia has been pretty successful in this program since it started, and we place nationally pretty much every year. We have some great artwork that we really get to enjoy. So if you have students that are within that age range and are interested in participating, again, please let us know. And kind of the star of the show today, what we're going to be talking about for the duration of this PowerPoint and presentation is Georgia Adopt a Stream. And we've kind of given you a brief overview already, and I think that most of you are pretty familiar, but Georgia Adopt a Stream is the volunteer water quality monitoring program for the entire state. So we equip and train volunteers that can be really any citizen, and you don't have to be in Georgia to be able to go through this protocol. We do have some participants that are a little outside of our borders, so we have different types of monitoring programs that you can get involved with. So really what we want to do is monitor water quality together as a whole, using some standardized procedures that we'll talk about a little bit later. But why is it important to monitor water quality? And really, I mean, if you think about life, right, there are sometimes these little things that go around on the internet, like water is life, but it's really true because every single living thing on this earth uses water and is affected by water and the water quality. So we want to make sure that we're being mindful and we kind of know what's going on in our area, and that we're able to kind of just stay up to date, and we can be proactive about things that we know are happening and work to prevent those types of things that may pollute our waters. So we're kind of skipping around here, but that's okay. We can just start on the watershed.
We're coming back in.
No, that's okay. That's fine.
Oh, this is from the beginning.
Making it work. It's okay. Yeah.
Just a refresh. Here we are.
Yeah. So what is a watershed? Watersheds, this is important. We're talking about water quality because there's that saying that you're always downstream from someone, but then you're also always upstream from someone, right? So anything that you are doing in your daily life that you may not even think about, like driving your car or leaving your car parked in a parking deck, maybe even walking your dog, these different things like that all have effects on water quality. And that's kind of looping back around to non-point source pollution. So watersheds are greatly affected by our everyday activities, but also we want to know how that's done, right? So what does a watershed, what does that even mean? Well, as you can see here on this image, we have the state of Georgia, and these are the 52 sub-watersheds of Georgia. So we have 14 major watersheds and then some smaller ones. And then these 52 smaller ones, but they can even be broken down smaller than that. So if we look at what the definition of a watershed is, it's the land area over which water is going to carry the different things that are over on that land area to a common point. So we have rain coming down. I like to put my hands in a little cup like this. It's hard to show you on a virtual presentation, but if we have our hands cupped like this, we can see that these upper areas up here, that's going to serve as our highest boundary, the high boundary that's going to mark where that watershed is. And then everything, all that land area really makes up the watershed. So even though water is like the main focus of what we're looking at there, we really have to be mindful of the land area and how everything that's on that land is really going to drain to that common point, which is usually a stream, wetland, a lake, a river. So if you, for example, have a stream in your backyard, and then you can delineate yourself, or you can just look around and see, this is a high point, this is a high point, this is my backyard watershed. So you could look at things in that way, as small as that, or you can look on a national level at that macro scale of watersheds. So just thinking about that in that way, that really everything that we do affects things in a small way, but also can be multiplied in a magnitude that it's kind of hard to understand sometimes. So really quickly before we transition to the next slide, I don't know where everyone is joining us from today, but we are located in Atlanta, so we are kind of Atlanta-centric in the workshops that we do here. But if you look at the kind of where all the major highways are combining and they make that little circle, that's Atlanta, right there kind of in the upper middle part of our state. So you can see that there are 4 different watersheds just within the city of Atlanta. So that's pretty impactful if you're thinking about how much of an impact that you have, maybe just even commuting in from work somewhere else. So, and that's just one example in one place, but you can see that these are all interconnected. So, as a part of studying watersheds and getting familiar with them, we do have goals as a part of our program, Georgia Adopt a Stream, and they do have a handy dandy acronym, and that is ADOPT. So our first one of our first and major goals is to increase public awareness. So we want to be able to talk to citizens, talk to people that are or maybe even are not interested in learning about water quality, and just letting people know why that's important and why, because we all have an effect on water and the water quality and its availability to everyone around us. And then the second being data, which we're going to be talking quite a bit about in this presentation, but we really want to focus on collecting quality baseline data. And that means, which we'll get into a little bit later, but that quality kind of feeds into the set protocols and things that we have so that we can track and make sure everyone is doing things in the same way. And then that baseline is talking about consistency in monitoring so that we can track any changes that may or may not be happening. And that kind of helps us look for different types of pollution. And then maybe you don't have any pollution. Maybe you're at a headwater stream and the water is beautiful all the time. And I hope you get to enjoy that, at least at some point. O stands for observation. So a big part of our monitoring protocol is observations. If you do start monitoring with our program, or if you're familiar with it already, you know that there is a big chunk of our data sheet just really talking about what does the water surface look like? What does it smell like? What do you see around you? All of these things are super important, and really just getting familiar with your area, first of all, but then second of all, how these physical parameters and different things can really affect the water quality as well. So, and they can give us some really great clues as to what's going on before we even start sampling. P is for partnerships. So today we hopefully are going to get to partner with some of you. We are a state agency, and we would love to partner with local governments and encourage citizens to do the same, because it's really great if you start monitoring to notify your local officials or your local partners. So for example, the water facility in your area most likely does do some testing and things like that. So if you're having problems in their area, they're a really great resource for you. And as well as, other nonprofit organizations, river keepers, anything like that that's gonna kind of feed back into that awareness and helping equip you and other people knowing what's going on. That's something that we greatly encourage. And then finally, tools and training. So we're getting part of that done today, kind of letting you know what's available to you, providing you with some resources that we do have, and letting you know that, we do offer workshops kind of all over. Now we're doing those virtually, which is pretty interesting and fun. So thanks for joining us. And and then we also can provide the equipment to do different types of monitoring, which I think Jenna will touch on a little bit later. So great. Program structure. So just to give you a little bit of background here, we have a nice little pyramid graphic, and you can see what the bulk of our program is made of, right? And that's 100% the volunteers are doing a lot of the groundwork and things like that. But we want to come back and touch on the volunteers at the end, because they're the best part, right? So the state office houses 2 Adopt a Stream state coordinators, which are Jen and myself. And then we have our program manager, and then we currently have 2 program assistants, who are Jackie and Cecilia. If you've joined on some other Confluence calls this week, then you may have already seen them. If not, sign up for some so you can see their faces. They are really great in helping us maintain this program. The board is a really great resource for us and helping us kind of guide what we want our program to encompass and how we can better our program. And you can check out our website if you're interested in learning more about their backgrounds. And then local coordinators are such a valuable resource for us at the state office as well, because since there are so few of us housed there, we really, really depend on local coordinators throughout the state and beyond to kind of train volunteers and get them educated and get them started monitoring. And then we're just there to provide assistance. So we do have lots of contacts for you if you're interested in finding someone in your area, which we will post links in the chat later at the end of this presentation. And looping back again to volunteers, so they do make up the bulk of our program. That's really what we're all about. We want to reach citizens and help train up citizen scientists so that we can monitor all kinds of different water bodies across the state and beyond. And so yeah, this whole conference that we're having is really to honor all of the people that are dedicated to our program and really give so much to us, but then also to everyone else for their consistency in monitoring. All right. So I think I kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, but as a part of our program, we do have a quality assurance project plan, also known as the QAQC. So if I say that later, that's what I mean. Our QAQC is in partnership with EPA. It's approved by EPA. And really what that means is that we have a set protocol for different types of monitoring. And these set protocols need to be taught to every volunteer before they start monitoring with our program. So that's what workshops are for, and going out into the field is for as a part of those workshops. So typically you have a PowerPoint presentation, we have a field portion, and then we have a certification test. And once all of those aspects are completed, you will be a certified volunteer in our database, which only certified volunteers can access. So once you've completed those, you can put things in, you can edit data that you've collected, and we do have errors and warnings in place. So if things are out of compliance there, then we'll know, so that we're always maintaining that quality assurance, quality control. But there are, quick other things about that. Anyone can access your data, and once it's put in. So I don't have to be a certified volunteer to look at what you have collected, maybe in your backyard stream. So if I'm trying to look at, if I'm studying things, if I want to know what the water quality is like because I'm your neighbor, I can pull all that data and look at it really easily, which we think is a great resource. Thanks, Jenna. And kind of feeding into that, right? So really your data is public once it's published in our website, or in our database, excuse me. And we think this is a super, super valuable resource, and we hope that you do too. And we want you to know that we think it's really important, and other people think it's really important, that you are monitoring and you are submitting your data. So as you can see here, these are some just different types of data uses for volunteer monitoring. So you can see the primary one is education, which again is kind of feeding back into that awareness aspect as one of the goals of our program. But it is true that educators, formal and informal, do use this information. And there's research done. We've had several professors and grad students use our data to do things like that. And even high school students getting that kind of practice using those things. And then, as you can see here, establishing baseline conditions is kind of second up. And that's a super important part of our program as well, because we want to be able to track any changes that may or may not affect our stream. And then we have so many more other ones here. Screening for problems. If you have problems in your area, then you can contact the right people, which we can help you with to get those issues resolved. Advocacy, riverkeepers use our data a lot for that. And then you can actually, excuse me, our data can be used in a certain way to help list and delist streams and a variety of different things. So really this slide is just to let you know your data is being used, what you're doing is important, and we really appreciate it.
Thanks, Bailey, for that wonderful explanation of all of those things. Hopefully, I do hear some thunder and rumbling outside right now, so I'm hoping that I also don't lose power. But we'll just go with it. So thanks everyone for being with us again. All right, so what we're looking at here is a map of active Adopt-A-Stream sites as of this morning. And so you can see that there's tons of those little like site balloons. There are actually 729, which is awesome. And active meaning that there has been data entered for that site within the last 365 days. You can also see that there's a bit of a gradient there. So that darker green is going to be sites that have had more monitoring events, and that lighter green are sites that have had less monitoring events. And also you can see that the sites kind of extend into our surrounding states, as Bailey kind of alluded to before, Florida, North Carolina, South Carolina, a little bit into Alabama as well. And you also see that there's like a nice big old monitoring gap right around in the center of Georgia, around Macon area. So if you happen to live in that area, or maybe you know someone who lives in that area who you think would be interested in this program, you should definitely tell them about us. So we have two kind of different categories of monitoring here at Georgia AdaptoStream. We have the QAQC monitoring, which is what Bailey talked about earlier, how you have to go through that certification workshop. And then we also have non-QAQC monitoring. So this slide is kind of breaking down the three different types of QAQC monitoring that we have. And so those are macroinvertebrate, chemical, and bacterial. So macroinvertebrate monitoring is going to involve sampling and identifying a variety of macroinvertebrates, and then from that determining a water quality index score. Personally, that's my favorite type of monitoring because I love like getting down and dirty with all the insects in the stream. It's also really neat because if you're normally maybe going on a stream walk or something, you don't see all of the very small life forms that are living, you know, under all of the rocks in the stream and in places like that. So it's just a nice reminder of that there's so much more out there than your eye sees on a day-to-day basis. So that kind of monitoring is done quarterly. And although it is the most time-intensive monitoring, because you do have to kind of dig through the samples and find all of the small insects, it is only conducted quarterly, as I think I just said. So the second type of QAQC monitoring is chemical monitoring, which is one of our most popular types of monitoring, I think, just because it's pretty easy and it can be done pretty quickly. And so that involves measuring 4 of our core chemical parameters, which are dissolved oxygen, temperature, pH, and conductivity. You can also test for more parameters as needed if you want to, and we have more information about that on our website. So this kind of monitoring is done monthly. And then our last type of QAQC monitoring is bacterial monitoring, which is going to involve collecting and incubating samples to count the number of E. coli colonies on your samples. And so that information is going to tell us about potential contaminants in the surface waters. And so that kind of monitoring is also conducted monthly. So the second group of monitoring, like I said, is the non-QAQC monitoring. And so this is a type of monitoring doesn't require certification. And so again, we have 3 types of this sort of category of monitoring: watershed, visual, and amphibian. So the watershed survey, we recommend that people do it once a year. And it essentially means that you start at your site and you walk up the stream and you walk your watershed, kind of noting how the land is being used and maybe how land use has changed over time, and identifying potential pollution sources and maybe pipes that are leaking or discharging things into your stream and things like that. Visual stream monitoring requires no equipment, and neither does the watershed survey. So this is another kind of benefit of those 2 types of monitoring. You just need your eyes and your data sheet and a piece of paper, I guess, if you wanted extra notes, but a writing utensil is what I meant to say. But the visual stream monitoring assesses the physical habitat characteristics of the water body and is conducted quarterly. And the last type of non-QAQC monitoring is amphibian. And so that's going to involve the passive capture and identification of 2 types of amphibians, tree frogs and salamanders, and also conducted quarterly. So even though you don't need to get certified for these types of monitoring, there are still workshops that we can offer to provide like the background information as well as an overview of the materials and methods and such. So for example, if you are really excited about amphibian monitoring, but you don't really know how to identify tree frogs, have no fear. You can just check out our workshop calendar and see if there is an amphibian monitoring workshop coming up. And if there isn't one, then you can contact us at the state office and we would be happy to organize one for you. All right, so hopefully, maybe we've convinced some of you who aren't volunteers to maybe get involved. And so if that is something you're thinking about, or maybe you're thinking someone that you know may be interested in this, how do you get started? So before volunteers start monitoring, we often encourage them to just spend a little bit of time of thinking about why they want to monitor and maybe what they want to do with their data. So I think a good example of this is if you lived in a neighborhood that has like a neighborhood stream and there's some sort of construction going on and there's lots of sedimentation that's kind of running into that stream, you could consider kind of monitoring upstream and downstream of that construction project and kind of seeing what the difference in water quality parameters are between those 2 sites. And potentially you could share that with your neighborhood association, for example. But once you decide kind of maybe why you're interested, maybe how you may want to use your data, and you pick whatever monitoring type works best for you, we recommend attending a workshop for that monitoring type. If it's the QAQC monitoring, then you need to attend a workshop to get that certification. But we recommend attending a workshop for all types of monitoring. So once you attend your workshop, you will be entered into our database as a person who can enter data into our database. And then the next step would be getting the equipment. So there are two different ways that you can get equipment. You can purchase it outright yourself, or you can obtain a loan from a local community coordinator. Or if your local community coordinator doesn't have the equipment that you need, then you can contact the state office and we can also try to loan you what you need to get started. So hopefully at that point you have selected your monitoring site or sites if you're doing multiple, and you would go ahead and start collecting data. And then once you've collected your data, you would submit it into our online database. And if you noticed any issues, then you would follow up on them. We have kind of a who to call list if you see something that's out of the ordinary. Like Bailey said, like long-term water quality monitoring is kind of providing us that baseline data. So if you do regular bacterial monitoring and you know that you normally get an E. coli count of, I can't think of an example right now, but let's say your normal level of E. coli count, but then you monitor once and you see that the plate is entirely purple and there's too many colonies to count, then that could be indicative of a sewage leak. And so in that case, you would want to contact your local municipality and try to get that taken care of as soon as possible. So that's one example of how volunteers kind of follow up on issues if they see something that's out of the ordinary. But most importantly, we want you to use this program to just learn about water quality and water quality monitoring in your water bodies in your local area in general, and also engage your friends. You can bring them to the stream or to the lake or to the wetland with you, whatever kind of water body you're monitoring, or members of your community, and most of all, just have fun. There's also just a wonderful Adopt a Stream community. So as I mentioned before on that map, there were over 700 sites. And so with that, there's over 1,000, I think it's 1,500 active volunteers as of this morning's data, which is just tons of people all over the state and into the surrounding states, as you saw, that are excited about monitoring their local streams. And so to bring that community together, we host an annual volunteer conference, which is what you all are a part of right now. And again, thank you for being here to our virtual conference. And we also, at our annual conference, we recognize the hard work of our volunteers, our trainers, community partners with annual awards. And so that's what we do annually, is have that conference and everyone kind of gets together and they network and they meet each other. But more regularly, we send out quarterly newsletters. And we also keep everyone kind of up to date on what we're doing via our social media channels. So I believe at this point, Bailey has reopened the chat. And so if you are interested in getting our quarterly newsletters, please drop your email in the chat right now, and we will get you on our newsletter sign-up list. And a few helpful links based on things that we've mentioned throughout the presentation. We have our workshop calendar link. I believe Bailey will put some of these in the chat a little bit later too. Workshop descriptions, and also how you can find your local coordinator. So if you were to go to a workshop calendar page right now, it's a little sparse, kind of because everything that's going on. Our workshops, I think there's 2 for the month of September. Again, they're limited to 10 people, and there's going to be social distancing measures put in place, and everyone's wearing masks and such like that, measures like that. So because of that, we've incorporated kind of this virtual classroom portion of our workshops into Confluence for the next 3 weeks. So next week, we're offering a chemical workshop, the classroom portion of the workshop. The following week, it's going to be bacterial, and then that last week is going to be macroinvertebrate. So if you're interested in any of those 3 QAQC monitoring types, we encourage you to attend that virtual kind of classroom portion of the workshop. And then after you've attended that, we can put you in contact with your local coordinator, and you can kind of meet up with them one-on-one for the field portion and certification quiz to kind of finalize your certification if you are interested in getting certified in those types of monitoring. So at this point, if you have any questions, if you haven't already, please drop them in the Q&A box, and I believe Bailey will join us back with her video and her microphone. And you can also see our contact information all over the slide. So that first thing is our website. We have our email address there. Please follow us on Instagram and Facebook if you don't already. And then, I mean, that's our address. The public aren't allowed in the building right now, but you can still call the phone number and get in contact with us. So I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing. Awesome.
Thanks, Jenna. That was great. I got some email addresses noted down. So thanks y'all for sending those in.
Awesome. Cool.
And we do have a couple questions in the chat.
Yeah, we do.
I mean, in the
Q&A.
Sorry.
Yeah, it looks like Johanna has asked a few questions.
Yeah.
So the first one she asked is, what differences do you see as far as water quality for different watersheds? Are there any commonalities between watersheds? So I'm assuming that she's asking kind of within Georgia, since you showed that picture.
Yeah, that's a great question. There definitely are commonalities between watersheds. We do see some differences kind of just depending on the natural geology of the area, right? Like naturally what is occurring there. But then also urban and rural. That's just such a hard word for me to say. Those are two really distinct areas that we can tell a lot of differences in really easily. So for example, if you're in an urban area, so as we saw Atlanta, just this right, that perimeter, inside the perimeter, Atlanta touches 4 different watersheds. So that urban area, we usually have more urban runoff. So if you have a big rain event like I just had that shut my power off, there's going to be, that rain is going to be washing all of the, car sediments and oils that are coming off of there, any trash or litter, all of those things are going to be washed into waterways really, really quickly because we have a lot of impervious surfaces. So we have a lot more roads, sidewalks, and parking decks and things like that where these things can accumulate much more than in more rural areas. So in that way, not saying that urban areas always have really bad water quality because that's not always true, but we do know that they suffer a bit more from different types of impacts than rural communities do. So if you're in a farming community like where I grew up in Southeast Georgia, where pretty much everywhere is farmland, then you see that there are a lot of places that are using fertilizers and pesticides and different things like that that are necessary for farmers. They have to use those things in a lot of cases. So we see those really also impacting the waterways really heavily because, again, if you're in that watershed and rain is coming down, it's going to be washing those things into waterways, and that's definitely not healthy either. So I don't know if that fully answered your questions. I feel like I kind of rambled on there for a second, but we do see some commonalities and we do see some differences as well.
Yeah. Oh, really? Do you know?
Yeah. So Johanna also asked, for the bacterial monitoring, do we test for bacteria other than E. coli like Giardia?
Yeah, so my understanding, Bailey can correct me if I'm wrong, but is that we only test for E. coli. That's in our methods, but we do provide kind of contacts if you were interested in testing for other types of bacteria and lab information where you could send it off to the lab and they could do kind of more intensive testing if you were interested in that. But the normal kind of adopt a stream bacterial protocol methods is just E. coli.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. There are, like Jenna said, different types of labs you can send stuff off to, but we choose to monitor for E. coli because we just use that as an indicator species, basically. It's just going to indicate whether that water is allowing other pathogens to thrive there or not. So more specific tests can definitely be done.
Yeah, we have another question. What is it called again when there is a concrete bottom of a river?
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I know there's culverts, but I know that that's not what they're talking about. It's probably something else.
Yes. I also can totally picture what you're saying, but the word is not coming. Channelized. Well, channelized is kind of when it's straight. Well, or I guess straight and concrete on the bottom could be channelized.
Could be concrete, or it could just be channelized because you're near a farm or different things like that. The sinuosity of the stream can be changed in different ways. Not always because of concrete bottom. I have no idea. It's escaping my mind what it's called. Sorry. We can get back to you on that.
Yes, we can. Are there any other questions about getting involved or Adopt a Stream in general?
Yeah, here's a great question. So when a river is orange looking in Georgia, is it more likely that sediment is heavy and not something extremely bad? So.
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
No,
Bailey,
that's okay.
I was looking up the word. Okay.
Oh yeah, okay, we're gonna get right to you. Jenna's on it. I would say, again, this kind of depends where you are. So if you are in South Georgia, and you're in an area that is heavily influenced by natural clay, right? We all know about the Georgia red clay. People sing songs about it. It's pretty well known. So in areas that are influenced by that in their natural geology, yeah, I would say it's pretty normal. If it's not, we don't want it to be bright orange or anything like that. But if you see those hints in there and you see that there's a lot of sediment, then that could be. But there are a couple things I can think of that maybe orange and maybe not be the most healthy. So if you've ever been to a stream and you see kind of orange looking, it almost looks like algae. It's like really clumpy, slimy looking, usually on the stream bed. That's known as iron bacteria. And while it's not necessarily harmful, it is naturally occurring. Too much of it, if it's just completely covering the stream bed, can be harmful to aquatic organisms there, clog their gills and things like that. And also if you have too much sedimentation in an area, and then that might be also bad, doing the same thing, clogging those gills and covering the stream bed in a way that's really not healthy. So I don't know if that was quite the orange you were talking about, but those are just a few things that come to mind.
Thanks, Bailey. I think that Barbara found the word we're looking for, a riprap. That sounds familiar to me, and that was what we were unable to recall.
Thanks, Barbara.
Yeah, thanks, Barbara. Awesome. Well, are there any other last minute questions, or anyone want to drop their email in the chat again for the newsletter? Feel free to do so now. But if there aren't any other questions, we just have a few last closing things, which are to ask you if you want to be more kind of involved in Confluence. That is going to be happening for the entire month of August. We're going to have a session every weekday for the whole month of August, which is really exciting. Then to join our Confluence Facebook group. So Bailey will put a link for that in the chat. But we post there daily kind of with a recap of what we did that day, and what session is going to be happening the next day with the registration link. So if you're interested, then you can register for that session. So it's just a good way to kind of connect with other people who are also virtually attending, and also keep up to date on the sessions that are going
on. Yeah, thanks, Jenna. I just put all of these links in the chat, the registration links and different things like that that might be helpful to you. One of the links that I put in there is a link to our silent auction. So every year Confluence has a silent auction with some pretty great items, if I do say so myself. There are some things that I'll definitely be bidding on, but the link is in there if y'all want to check that out. We would really appreciate it. You can bid online fully, and it'll be open until August 31st. So go ahead and check those out. And then we do want to let you know that after this session ends, you'll be automatically directed to a survey to let us know your thoughts about this session, your thoughts about the conference, and anything that we can do to improve. So if you don't mind, it's a quick, I think probably 5 questions, if you wouldn't mind just taking the time to fill that out for us. We would greatly appreciate it. We want to be able to improve and make this the best that we can for everyone. So thanks again for everybody for joining, and we hope to see you all again soon. Thank you.